Have you ever wondered why some real estate agents perform at ultra-high levels every single year? Welcome to the Unstoppable Agent Podcast with your host, Richard Fournier. Each week, we interview real estate agents from around the world who are constantly ranked in the top 1% of the real estate industry. My mission, share with you their best strategies so that you can create your own peak results as a real estate agent. It's time to become unstoppable.
Well, hello and welcome back to this episode of the Unstoppable Agent Podcast. I'm your host, of course, Richard Fournier. Super excited to have a gentleman with us who I've gotten to know briefly, and my belief around him is that he's a true gentleman, a true professional in the business of real estate. Welcome to the show, David Cinelli.
Hey, how are you, Rich?
I'm so glad you're here today. You know, this podcast is legitimately focused around what creates a top producer, the mindset, the activities, the daily method of operation around what creates a top producer. But there's so much more to a top producer than what they do today. They really had a background and they developed a personality to be able to do this type of business. So hopefully we can draw out of that of you today, because you know what, the audience really wants to know. You're in the top 1% of transactions on TREB. And that says a lot, because there's a lot of members on the Toronto Real Estate Board for our out-of-country listeners. So thank you for being here today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
So you've been around the industry for a while. Like, how many years have you been in?
I got licensed in 2015, just around March. I didn't start practicing, because you do your training, everything, until probably end of May, maybe beginning of June of 2015.
Right. And so you go from where you were then, and you go to the top, in the top 1% of performers on the Toronto Real Estate Board. And that's for the number of transactions. And, when you look back at how you started and what you're doing today, I want to ask this question and take it the right way.
Okay.
The question is, why you, man? David, what makes you special? Because there is, our churn in this industry is really high. And I really do want you to think about this answer, because it's really what makes you special. What enabled you to perform at this high of a level?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's the question I usually answer in my listening presentation. So it's not that.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, you know what? It's one of the 6 questions that I come in. I say, well, hey, what's so special about me? Why? Here, I give them my numbers, and I'm like, well, why is that, right? And it's a very common question. So a little bit of my history, right? Our family came. I know we're going way back, and this is kind of what sets my mindset and where we're at with real estate in our family. My dad immigrated from Italy, and when he was here, I think he was 16 when his dad passed away. Had to drop out of school, and about 20 was when he bought his first property. So since then, he was buying and selling, and that kind of thing worked into basically, even though he was a hairdresser, that wealthy barber, that was my dad, right? He was doing that stuff, right? But he went, and I talked to you offline too, but he was more of buy a property, just run into the ground and then make a profit and sell it. He was more of a slum, right? It was causing a lot of
what did you say? You can say it louder.
Yeah, he was a slumlord. Even my mom says it now, right? My dad's passed away now when we talked about, but yeah, he was and it wasn't nature. He goes, he just didn't know. They grew up with means, right? So it's that was their whole thing. They didn't spend money unless they had to, right? I was a AAA goalie. I remember being up in my first brand new pair of pads. I was 15, and the reason why my parents had to buy me a pair of pads, I got a slap shot playing AAA hockey, got a slap shot in my knee and almost broke my knee. And I'm like, okay, can I finally get a brand new pair of pads? Anyway, so that just kind of tells you the mentality where they're at. Fast forward for me, I bounced around playing hockey, went to the University of the States. And then when I came back, I did my MBA because I was kind of lost, didn't know what to do with my life. But when I came back, I remember my dad sitting me down, and I got a job as an analyst. And long story short, the first time I got my check, I was I didn't realize how much taxes and CP and all that kind of crap. I'm like, holy shit, where did all my money go, right? And I remember reading, my brother gave me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and we kind of talked about this, and it kind of dawned on me, my dad's been doing this Rich Dad, Poor Dad thing since eon, so might as well learn from him. So I sat down. So my dad sat me down. First of all, he said, what the hell are you doing working for somebody else?
Right.
That's not the school. So in the meantime, what I did is I said, okay, then teach me, right? Teach me. So we got into my first rental property, which I own. And then that was 2005. And I've owned rental properties since then, right? So I got to find out I was doing everything on my own, right? I got to build my network. I got to figure out how to talk to potential renters. I was doing everything a realtor would do and a subcontractor and everything else on top of that. So that's kind of where the pedigree came from. I kind of learned about houses while doing it. And then my wife and I had some issues with some houses. We had one fire in one of my houses, then we had foundation break and all this other stuff. So we had a lot of shit going on. And I also was at a low point for money wise. Throughout this process too, I had a ton of bad realtors, bad advice, going back and forth, like seeing all the shitty things and things that they do. And I fucking, excuse my language, but I fucking hated the industry. I hated being associated with realtors because all the ones that I had dealt with were like used car salesmen. No one was telling me anything. And I was like frustrated. One of my last houses, I had to like do open houses for them. I was like, why am I doing open houses? I'm not even a licensed realtor. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Right. Anyway, long story short, there's a lot of in there too. Like I took all my experiences and I tried not to be a realtor. I got packaged out from my analyst job and I was like, okay, I created a business, which was, I was helping people using my knowledge, how to find rental properties, how to turn a regular property into a rental, making like a single dwelling home into a duplex or triplex. And then also I called it the property manager. So if I helped you do those two things, I could help you run the business for at least 6 months free. And then we could work on, the property management. So I created this business plan. And then within that business plan, we were just trying to figure out how to monetize it. Right. And the problem I found out was like the realtor was the gap. And then what happened was, during the process, I did my real estate license without wanting to be a realtor. I realized at one point, I should be a realtor. And that's kind of the background. So when I got my license, and then as soon as I started learning and practicing, like I went to Royal LePage Signature because they taught me how to do stuff. I hired a coach within the first 6 months. And then all the stuff, how to find the business, because I already knew more stuff than some of the teachers when I was going to real estate college. Where it was funny, the second class, I was teaching the class at some point. So I had the base knowledge of what was going into real estate. So for me, it was just more fine tuning. And it's like, okay, how do I find agents? And learning, how do I take all the bad experiences and make it into a positive experience? And that's what always I've been trying to do. How do I stay ahead of the curve? How can I be different from the rest of the population, of the rest of the realtors? What are realtors doing that is not working? What are realtors doing that is working? And what gives value back to my clients to help them say, hey, like, you know what, you did such an awesome job. And at the same time, it's like, I don't hammer them from like 6 or 7%, on for us, it's a regular 5%. I don't charge crazy amount of money. I charge a regular price, but I give you tons and tons of value. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but I thought about it and that's kind of my history. That's where I came from. And my clients will tell you right now, it's like, I deliver quality.
Right. You deliver quality. And so you look at, that pedigree and really looking at that process, but you still got to find clients, right, David?
Yeah.
Right. So tenants, fine, no problem, right? Maybe you got the property, but if you look out and say, what was the initial strategy for you to go out and acquire relationships? That's what we do. We acquire relationships. And, there's a lot of coaching and training around this conversation, but what did you find to be the most successful strategy for you that was in alignment with your values and your personality?
So all coaches would say this, and I think this is huge. And what really resonated well with me is hit your database, figure out what your database is. And whether it was my Royal LePage Signature or when I first did the teaching course, they're like, they told me how to call when people call your database and figure out who's in your database. Right. And then when I had my coach and said the same thing, he taught me how to when and to call and what to say in the beginning. So the database was a huge thing. So I was with our coaching, they had 3 pillars in which you wanted to get through. So the second pillar I had was just sold, just listed, was door knocking at the time. Right. And then the third one was open houses. I'm really good at open houses. I just don't do them in as much anymore because I find the value that I can give to other people. I can help my other agents do the open houses. I can teach them how to do it. And I do like an amazing job at open houses. Like, we bring refreshments, we post on social media, we do live feeds, so we can do barbecue some days, there's always, I bring water, veggies, food, and people are like, let me guess, you just do the cookies for the smell. I'm like, no, because little kids come into the property and I give them a cookie and they stay longer. So those are the 3 pillars in which I was started with, right?
So just to reiterate, it was your database, right? Looking within your database and saying, is there someone in this database that perhaps in the future may be able to either want to purchase their own property, sell their own property, or maybe segmented into investor profiles.
Right. Or even just know somebody that might use me because like I said, because I've been doing this for, 10 years at this point in real estate, like everybody knew that I loved real estate. So when I finally got my license and I called somebody, so this was when I was going through my database, I called somebody who was like, I'm like, hey, Patrick, it's David Cinelli. How are you? Great. Hey, just got my license. They're like, oh, that's awesome. Like, you should have been doing, I'm talking like this conversation with my buddy Patrick, I used to work with. And I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, do you know anybody looking, buying, selling? I'm going to knock it out of the park, right? I just needed some of the opportunity to help. And he's like, yeah, that's great. And that stemmed from, I might know somebody, I might be doing this. And then as soon as I was able to get one person in and get my teeth in, then the social media stuff that I started doing started taking over. Because the door knocking only got me so far, right? Like their strategies had a door knock and it got me 2 listings, but I was door knocking 3 or 4 days a week. I hated it. Like, it's just, I was doing it because I was able to call, but I didn't want to be somebody knocking on my door. And I'm like, why am I knocking on somebody else's door? Right. Like, eventually I stopped doing that.
Okay.
I figured out a way how to instead use social media as my second pillar. And the reason why I like social media is because when I talk to my database and I explain that I'm looking for business and I'm trying to find that too, my database, if they said, yes, I know somebody, what they do is they always give them my Instagram. They give them my website. I give them something like, and they see the stuff that I do and I talk about. So a cold lead all of a sudden becomes a warm lead. When they finally come there, I talk to them, we get a conversation. It's as if they already know who I am. And they're like, oh, it's like, it's as if I've been talking to you already because I do a lot of videos where I talk. I don't just talk about real estate. I talk about mindset. I talk about house tips and stuff too. Now we're just doing a lot of talking and I'm showing my personality because
video first idea, right? Creating a digital personality for people to get to know, like, and trust you over time on a digital platform. Okay.
Absolutely. And I find that became my second pillar, and I don't do as much as the other ones too, but the database is still huge. And what also I do with my database is, like, if you're my clients list, you get a ton of stuff from me. Like, literally, we talk about touch points. On your birthdays, you're getting cookies. Last year we did something for, I think, pizza day or something they do for family day. Then I did an Easter egg hunt for the kiddies outside for the kids, for all of my clients and their friends and in the neighborhood. Then I did for Mother's Day, I did mimosas, and I'm going to do that again, mimosas and manicures in my office. On Father's Day, we did a cigar and scotch tasting night in there. And then we, like, on Halloween, I sent them all these DC skulls with candy for the kids. And then on around the holiday season, we also do this huge bash with food trucks and booze and everything else outside steam. So I actually have clients come to me all the time, and they get cookies too at Christmas time. Clients are like, Dave, you got to stop. You're just giving us too much. And I'm like, well, who else is doing this? You've had other realtors in the past. Name me one other person that's done all this.
100%. I get it.
So I give a ton back. And I think that strategy for me works because also when I'm calling my database, now I have a reason to call them. Right.
Sure, you do, right? You're reaching out to them and say, hey, listen, I have this event. I would like you to come be part of my life and be part of my circle of influence. It's really important.
Absolutely. And that's what I hammer the most on. The social media is fun, and I like it because it gives me a creative outlet. To be honest, I love the one thing I didn't like about being a treasury analyst, which was investing money, and getting into accounting, was just there was no personality in it. Like,
you're not even behind the camera. You're behind a desk. And
yeah,
I got it. Let me ask you a question. It's interesting to hear, digital, video first marketing. And that, in my belief now, and you'll see some of the stuff we're doing, is I'm fully adopting the idea. Whether I'm good at it or not is irrelevant. I'm fully engaged. Like, every single day video is coming out every day now. And
amazing.
And sure, it's a lot of work. And the people that are reaching out I have no idea. I've never met these people, and they're reaching out, and it tells me they're watching and trying to figure out what's next in their life. Anyway, you have a mindset, and I really want to go down this road because my personal belief, and just based on my experience, is that everything we do is around 98%. It's not even 80, it's 98, driven by our belief systems and driven by our mindset. And Did you have difficulty making those first phone calls to your database? Like
I think everybody does.
yeah. Like, and I'm thank you for being transparent. I think it's really important.
Yeah, like listen, and every time I door knocked, I would have to psych myself up.
Anxiety, right? Like, I don't want to do this.
I printed all these things out. I'm like, would anybody even know if I didn't knock on the first door? But I always would push myself and say, listen, it's always the first phone call. And I forget who akin this. I don't know if it was Richard Robbins or somebody else said this too. It's like when you're making pancakes, the first one you just throw it anyway. So it's like just if you have it, like somebody said that about marriage too, which I don't agree with. Anyway, that was funny, but it's true. Like the first one, you're
always an expensive pancake, by the way.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm like, no, I think my wife didn't hear that, but no, it's true because the very first phone call you make at any, like even now, sometimes it's a nice kind of, or I do like video CMAs now, which are, like we're doing the videos in which we give like 3 houses, we do it under 5 minutes, and I record the screen. It's just give an overview. Always the first one I'm doing, whether it's a phone call, my CMA or door knocking or something I do, I'm always fumbling because even though I think about what I'm going to say, it doesn't always translate. And I'm like, okay, this works, but it doesn't work. But at the end of the day, you put your ego aside and say, listen, I need to do this. Like you can't be stuck in your head all the time because it's like, wherever, like, was it success is beyond fear, right? So you have to get over that fear because you're not going to be successful unless you get uncomfortable. And the uncomfortable feeling, right? Like you're in your comfort zone, nothing grows there, right? But the uncomfortableness shows you that's what you need to do. So anytime I feel uncomfortable, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I need to do. And then for the first one, then it becomes comfortable again, right? But the very first phone call, it's like, everybody says the same thing. Like, I don't want to be begging for money. And I didn't know what to say in the beginning either. So that's why my coach is like, you're not begging for money. What you're doing is, and he taught us how to do the 12-second rule, like about, not talking more than 12 seconds in the first minute. And then, kind of what to say. And then kind of just say, keep it under 5 minutes. And you're not begging for money. You're asking, say, hey, listen, I just got into this career. If you know anybody that can help, everybody wants to help somebody. I'm not going into somebody, I'm not going to you and saying, hey, can I have $100? And they're like, whoa, you know what I mean? But then you start seeing the psychology, what's happening when people, like now when I have a telemarketer calling me and they're like, even if it's a good cause, I see myself, my brain turn off. So now I'm using those. My wife goes all the time. Every time we're in a phone call and somebody calls me, she goes, why don't you hang up? Like, it's telemarketing. I'm like, I want to see their strategy. I want to see how I am reacting as a client. Right. And I want to say, like, sometimes I teach these guys, I'm like, what you did was wrong, right? But like, even to this day, like I've been doing, like, again, 7 years, 7 like that first phone call, it's like, you dread it, right? But once you get done, you feel so good, right? Like, so what I do for my database is like, and helps for me, I'm very visual. So I have my leads list. I need to hit a certain amount of people on a certain day to talk to. Yeah. And I have my leads over here too. And it just feels good checking them off. Right?
Sure, it does. Right. Yeah. You feel like, well, listen, if you're not, it's full contact sport, right? If you're not having conversations, you're out of business. But it feels really good to get it done. And then you can go to bed feeling that actually I tried something, I did something, I accomplished something, and I planted a lot of seeds because we don't know the law of gestation. We don't know how long things take to bloom, right? Yep. And it's our job to plant every single day.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and that's why I don't know if you like, that's why I look at my leads list and I'm making sure I'm cultivating those as well, because it's a whole process. I have 2 leads sides. I have like you said, we don't know the gestation period. We have ones that are gestating for, like, I have ones for a couple of years and I know they're going to buy something, they're looking for something specific. I don't forget about them. But then I have the ones that are going to buy within 90 days. So the ones I'm hammering a little bit more.
And I think this is where, I had somebody who talked to me and said, well, Rich, I have 4 clients that are going to do something in the next 2 months. I'm good right now. Like, I'm good. Yeah. Okay. Like, what guarantee you're going to get the financing? What guarantee that something doesn't happen? What guarantee that someone doesn't drop dead of heart attack? I know it sounds dramatic, but like that money is not in your bank account.
Yeah.
And so they're on the wall. And next I'm having another deeper conversation with someone else. And we lie to ourselves. We give ourselves false hope, false belief, because we don't want to do the work that's necessary to create something extraordinary in our life. And it drives me a little bit batty, right? When you look at who you are and what you've done, if you were to say to me, Rich, like, I call you up and I'm like, David, listen, I'm getting into real estate. What do I do? David, what do I really do? Like, I need to eat in 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, that's a real conversation, listeners. Like, you you may not get paid for 6 to 9 months in your first year in business, right? And so what would you do day one right now? I'm your son. You're not allowing me near your family. You're not allowing me anywhere near your personal database. Dropping into a new city. Rich, what are you doing?
Well, in a new city. So I would first off, I'd find the local realtor too. There's two things I would probably do. And I always say to somebody who's starting in real estate too.
Okay, I'll do a disclaimer. Not new city. I did that. Don't do what I did.
Okay.
But new city, but like you have a circle of influence.
Okay.
Like you've lived there, but you're not opening up dad's database to you.
Right. And what I usually tell people before, but I'm going to use this as a disclaimer too, without hiring a coach or going on a team, or I'm talking to somebody who wants to do it themselves, because I think somebody who's had, if they're young, they should probably have I think you always should have a coach anyway to help you with this stuff, a mentor or having a team lead in when your first year, at least, just to teach you. But okay, forget that's kind of, I'm throwing that out. You don't want any of the stuff. You want to do everything on your own. Grab your phone. Grab an app on your phone, download every single person on that phone.
Yeah.
Go through that list.
Yeah.
Remove everybody on that list that you call up that don't really know who you are. Right. So these are people that I call up that I say, hey, within one sentence, they know who I am. Okay. Right. So, for example, if I call you up and say, hey, Rich, it's David Cinelli, and you're like, oh, I met you last year. I'm Matthew's cousin. You did a work for me. I had this plumber. I said, let's have a conversation. You did a work on me on the salon. Yes, I remember you. Great. I just got my license. Okay. So anyway, those people, what you do is you take them, and what you need, you start. This is your database. This is how you're starting.
Yeah.
And you're going to take that database, and every single day, I would say, our coaches would tell us break into 11, but when you're first starting this business, you have no money, call at least 10 people a day on that list. Talk to them, not texting, not emailing, call them for 10 days, for 5 days. So Monday to Friday between 9 a.m. or even 8:30, 9 a.m. to 11 o'clock, what you're going to do is you're going to hammer them and you're going to call them. At least if you don't get those 10 people, extend it, because now you have no other obligations. Lock yourself in a room with your phone. They don't answer you, work on to the next person, work on the next person, work on that. And you have to talk to 10 people. Yeah. Now, at the end of the day, what are you saying? Exactly what we said before. Hey, I'm David Cinelli. Like I just do the 12-second rule. We'll talk about that. But do that for 10 days and get leads that way, and continue to do that. And then if you miss that person, make sure you get them at the end of the week. If out of those 50 people, so say you try to call and they didn't answer you for 5 days straight, then you can leave them a message on Friday and then work the next one, and do that until you get through all of your database, and do that for the first, little while. And then at 11 o'clock, then you have to do a second. Now you have to work on your business. Okay, what is my strategy? And I would always say at least 1 day a week to 2 days a week, figure out you have to have a social media strategy now. And that's how it works. It's not in the olden days. What I do is I usually record 1 or 2 days a week for the whole week. Right. And I strategize on what I'm going to say in those weeks and those topics. Figure out when you're doing that every single day, what you're going to post every single day. Now, it doesn't have to be videos all in the beginning, right? But the thing is being consistent and set a schedule. Those two things, calling your database and having a strategy on there, which you can refer people to, which are value added. If you have an office like we have that gives you a market update and stuff too, like you can use that as an added in there. So it's in there, and then share it, and then put some money behind it too. Put like a $5 advertisement on it if it's a video you really like. But have a strategy for 7 days a week and continue to do that, because what it'll do is set you apart, and then you'll start to get followers and stuff too.
So let me ask you another question. You know what, by the way, brilliant advice. I hope our audience, and listen, we get a lot of listeners. I think this is a new podcast. We're 5 months in. I think we're in 14 countries already. So,
wow.
So, David Cinelli's in Toronto, just so you know, with Roll the Page Signature. If you know anyone buying or selling in Toronto, please.
Thanks for the plug.
But no, I mean that very, very much so. I think people are appreciating your advice. So let me ask you one question. So so it's not rocket science.
No.
But there's a gap between knowing and doing.
Oh my God. Yeah. Isn't the path to hell filled with good intentions? Isn't that the same?
Right. And, so you filled the gap. And every day, my feeling is there is a battle in your mind to fill the gap. I don't care how experienced you are. There's a battle. What do you do to fill the gap? You know what to do every day. And why are you acting then? Why are you executing on the intellectual knowledge, which is a secret for all of you who are listening right now?
Yeah. So what keeps me motivated on the day to day to remind me, I pay for things that I know that like, if I don't get this job, I can't afford. So like I buy rental properties, which I know have to come in case the market drops. I'm going to have to come out of my pocket. I bought a couple of nice watches, which, like these ones I remind every time I put this on my watch, I'm like, you have to work today. I lease my Porsche. I have a nice Porsche. I have another too, but every time I jump in my car, I like my car. If you want to keep this car,
You get to work.
get to work. My wife and I bought this nice house that you can see behind me here. I'm actually recording from my home. We bought it last year, and of course, we're on a variable mortgage. So every time the mortgage rates goes up, I get hammered, and that also reminds me I have to work. So I don't rest on my laurels. I did those things on purpose, believe it or not. I could have sat in our old house. I had a $700, maybe $600,000 or $700,000 mortgage on it. We sold it for $2.5 million, I think, last year, and we upgraded to this house. I could have sat there and said, "No, listen, my mortgage payments were like $1,000 a month or something. It was something ridiculous. I could have sat in there and said, I don't need to do this. I could have not got a nice car. I didn't need to do any of that stuff. But I realized at that time that if I did those kinds of things, it psychologically pushes me. I always have and the other thing is like we talked before, like I was always a high level hockey player. So I already had
that fire.
I have a very competitive spirit, very, very competitive spirit. Like you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it. Like that's awesome. Like I'm very defiant that way. And I'm also motivated and self-motivated. When I first got in this industry, I had no idea what realtors made. I had no idea. Like I didn't even think about the numbers. I didn't get into this industry making money. When I got packaged out and I decided to transition to real estate, I thought as long as I make $100,000 a year, my life, my family will not suffer from this. This is for me doing it. Even though I've always loved real estate, I don't want my family to suffer.
Right.
So these things in my mind, the competitive spirit, making sure I'm providing for my family, those two things were like, covered. I'm like, okay, what else can I do to push myself? So competitive, by me getting small tokens in my mind reminds me every day, I'm like, you got to go out and work. You have to go out and work. And I know it sounds like great. Yeah. Will it be the end of the day? Like if I don't make a transaction, no, but I've also made a comfort stuff. But every January, I'm always in a panic.
Yeah.
Why am I in a panic? Because I'm back at zero. And I do that to myself on purpose. I don't even think about the money coming in this year. Like I got a payment today. I just had an email today. Like great. To me, it's zero. I've made $0 in January. And that's how I start my mentality.
Right. There's a lady I knew she's actually at Royal LePage, and I'm fighting to get her on the podcast. She I'll call her name out. I'm going to send this to her. Her name's Arena. She's Royal LePage in Glen Abbey in Oakville. And she said to me about 13 years ago, and she goes, day one, she said one thing to me then, it really struck me because I just know. I said, what's the secret? She goes, I just know. But she says, day one, I put my head down on my desk. I go, okay, I'm at zero. Even though does extremely well. I'm at zero again. And I just, okay, let's go. And that's it. And that's about as much thought as she gives it. And then she just goes. And there's a fire. And you can't create something if there's no spark. Right. And there's got to be a hunger that's deep inside. And that's a common denominator that I've found with people like you who are performing at a high level. They may have fear, they may have doubt, may have trepidation and some anxiety around some things. And either they figure out a way to deal with it and get rid of it, or they just go through it.
Yeah.
And there really there's no secret around that. You got to go through it, and you got to deal with the pain of fear, doubt, and anxiety and go through the weeds. And, people like you have found a way to do that. And I think that's really inspiring. So just kind of quickly, the brain can take as much as the butt can handle. And in terms of podcasts, and with your permission, I think we're going to bring you on again.
Absolutely.
Down the road. Because I think that success leaves clues, and they're just clues, though. They're not the holy grail. They're clues, though, to what works for an individual. And so here's the advice that I'm getting. From a strategy standpoint, your database is a gold mine. And you can't be fearful around reaching out to them and asking them for help and saying, this is what I'm doing. Shameless self-promotion is okay as long as your intention and your ethics and your value system is good. Mm-hmm. Right? If your intention is good, then you're fine. And so go through that database, add them into your database, and have 10 conversations a day, not 10 phone calls, 10 conversations. It could take you 100 phone calls to get to those 10 conversations. And I think that's the secret. And I think that's one thing that I want to add in for what you said, because the 10 conversations could take 100 calls to get to.
That's correct.
And you gotta be willing to do it.
And let's be honest, sometimes like if you want to break it down and do like, I've heard people say 5 conversations and 5 texts. And I'm like, you can do 5 and 5. It's fine. Like, send it to you, but that's reality when you're first starting out and they don't know. Sure. If you've talked to them 3 times this year and text them was like, hey buddy, just checking out to see like if you got my market update, because you should be sending a market update every once a month and saying, hey, did you get that email, by the way?
Right. And so it sounds like, you're belly to belly, full contact guy in the sport of real estate. And that's the way I kind of view it. Relationships first, but all your digital media and all the things that you do in the back end really supports the conversation and supports the relationship.
That's correct. Yeah.
And, it's not like you're driving the business from social media yet, or maybe in the future you will, or it's starting to happen because now you're playing in the game, but it's really in support of, hey, listen, did you see what I've done? Oh, you know what, David, I have been watching you. Great job in all of your stuff. You know what? Yeah, Dave, I don't know you, and I've been on your list for a while, and I've seen what you've done. I feel like I know you. Like it's in support of the relationship. And I think that's where they said, well, I don't have any time, Rich. I don't have time to do it. What do you mean? When someone goes to look you up, because someone told them your name, what are they going to find? A Yahoo account? Yeah. Or are they going to find a professional who lives and breathes what they do? And that's what you're doing. I was on your website today and I saw the videos that you do, and it's a really great job. And anyone that's listening, go to David's website and really look at what he's doing and follow a leader. Do what he's doing.
Appreciate that, Rich.
I really appreciate what you're doing. And I think I want to have you on again to talk about next steps on how you're cultivating the database daily over time. You've taught us how to fill it. You've taught us how to access it. And then next time we're going to talk a little bit about how, the day-to-day cultivation that you do and your daily.
Yeah, because there's a whole lot that goes into that.
Right. And I think that's a whole other conversation. And again, so what is the best way for someone to reach out to you today?
You know what? If you go on Instagram, I'm on David V. Cinelli _ realtor. There, I'm on there. You can check me out at davidcinelli.com. Message me. You can always call or text me. 416-876-9998. I'm not afraid. My number's everywhere. But yeah, like I'm all over social media. Like reach out to if usually I answer DMs personally, even though I have my assistant on there too. But if you want to just call a conversation, text me, and then we can go from there. That's easy too. So I'm very accessible, and I'd like to answer. The one thing my clients always say to you, and anybody who's ever dealt with you, I like to answer pretty quickly. I answer right away. I also have, I think, ADHD, because if I don't answer right away, I might forget about it. So I get to make sure.
Yeah, you did. You took my phone call right away.
Yeah, and I do. I answer phone calls. I answer text messages. I do it myself. Unless if you're being crude, then you'll get blocked. Obviously, like there was when I was on HGTV, like you'd be like in the beginning there, I'm married. I have kids. I have family. I have an assistant that looks at my account. Like literally, you were getting some really obscene stuff on there, and it happens. So listen, that's part of our industry. I have thick skin, but you're going to get blocked if you do that. But if you're a real person and you're courteous, I'm of course going to answer. And I love helping other realtors as well.
Awesome. Well, listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate you giving back to the community, and I look forward to developing this relationship further. And I look forward to having you on in the future. So thanks again.
Thanks, Rich. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you like what you've heard and you're interested in creating a quantum leap in your real estate business, here's what I want you to do next. Head over to www.theunstoppableagentprogram.com and book an appointment to speak with our team. We'll get on a Zoom call with you for about 30 minutes and get you crystal clear on 3 things. Number 1, what do you really want out of your life and your business? Number 2, what is not working for you today? And number 3, the exact mindset strategy you should be using to create massive change in these areas. Remember, creating massive, consistent results in your real estate business does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance to make it happen. We're helping clients all over the world create peak results in their real estate business. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to www.theunstoppableagentprogram.com. We'll chat soon.